picked a remote tent spot where the trees pressed in close and the lake was out of sight. I wanted one quiet night and an early hike at dawn. By sunset, there was no one else on the dirt spur road behind me. I set my tent on a patch of needles and hung my food bag from a branch. The wind stayed low, and the woods felt muffled like a held breath. When I crawled inside, the zipper ticked once, like someone flicked it with a nail. I froze and listened for an animal, but the sound came again, deliberate and slow. My headlamp beam made the nylon glow, and I saw a shallow dent form near the door seam. Something outside pressed in and released, like it was testing where I was. I called out, trying to sound annoyed instead of scared, and the forest answered with nothing. Then the dent moved higher, dragging along the fabric in a straight line. The zipper gave a tiny grind, not opening, just being pulled. I snatched my keys and realized the car was parked 50 yards away, hidden behind brush. The nearest campground was a long drive back down the service road. The tent door suddenly went slack, like whoever was there stepped to the side. I forced the zipper down 2 inches and aimed my light through the gap. A person stood so close I could see the weave of a dark hood and the shine of wet skin at the nose. They lifted one finger and slowly traced it across their own lips, then tilted their head like they were listening to me breathe. I jerked the zipper shut and kicked hard at the wall, shouting this time. The figure responded by slamming both palms against the tent, making the poles bow toward my face. The silhouette shifted to the door and yanked the zipper tab downward in one violent pull. I threw myself out the opposite side, ripping a seam and crawling into the needles. Cold air hit my lungs like water, and I ran bent over so branches wouldn't snag my eyes. Behind me, footsteps pounded fast, keeping the same distance like a metronome. I didn't stop until my car door swallowed me and the locks clicked down. In the rearview mirror, the hooded figure stood at the tree line, perfectly still, holding something small that flashed, my tent's zipper tab. When my headlights washed over them, they raised it like a key and smiled without moving their eyes. I pulled my campervan into a forest pull-off because the road signs promised a scenic turnout. It was late enough that the woods had turned to a black wall. I told myself it was just one night before driving on. I cracked a roof vent and shut the curtains, leaving only the dash clock glowing. The road was empty, and the van rocked once as I shifted in my seat. Then a soft knock came from the sliding door, followed by a second knock that paused like it was waiting for me to answer. I stayed still, counting my breaths, hoping it was a branch or a pine cone. The knock returned, but now it traveled, tap-tap, across the metal toward the driver's door. The handle gave a careful lift, as if someone had tried it before and knew how quiet it could be. I reached for my phone and saw I had one bar that kept dropping to nothing. Outside, a shape crossed the windshield and blocked the starlight for a beat. The van's side mirror twitched, like it had been bumped by a shoulder. I decided to drive, but the key fumbled in my shaking hand and the steering wheel lock resisted. The moment the engine turned over, a heavy thud hit the side panel. The van rocked again, harder, like someone leaned their full weight into it. I snapped on the cabin light for 1 second and looked out through a gap in the curtain. A man stood inches from the glass, face turned sideways so one eye could peer in. He wore a reflective vest that didn't belong out here, and his mouth moved like he was speaking to someone right behind me. The driver's handle jerked up and down, faster now, and the lock button on my door rattled. I stomped the gas, and the tires spun on gravel before catching. The man's hand slapped the window as the van lurched forward, leaving a smeared print that looked too wide to be accidental. I didn't slow until the trees broke and a gas station sign lit the road ahead. My hands were numb from gripping the wheel, and the van still smelled like warmed plastic from the sudden speed. When I finally dared to glance back, a pair of headlights sat deep in the turnout, not moving, as if they'd been waiting with the engine off. At the station, I scrubbed the window and saw the smear wasn't mud at all. It was a clean arc through the dust where a palm had pressed, and in the center was a single long scratch, dragged downward like a tally mark. I drove until sunrise, and every time my dash clock reflected in the glass, it looked like an extra set of eyes watching from the dark behind me. I took a temporary shift checking a firewatch tower because the ranger station needed someone to cover a weekend gap. The tower sat above the pines, and the little cabin at the top felt like a boat docked in the sky. By nightfall, the radio was quiet, and the horizon was a black ring. I made coffee on a small stove and latched the trapdoor that led to the stairs. The wind pushed at the windows in slow pulses, and the tower creaked like it was settling. Then the trapdoor latch clicked once, sharp and metallic, like it had been tapped from below. I told myself it was vibration and pressed my boot against the hatch to be sure. The click came again, followed by a gentle scrape, wood on wood, as if someone tried to lift it without making a sound. The radio speaker hissed once, and a breathy whisper slipped through. My name, stretched thin. I grabbed the flashlight and aimed it at the trapdoor seam, watching for movement. The seam widened a hair, then stopped, like fingers had lost their grip. A second later, the stairs below gave a slow creak, one step, then another, climbing at a patient pace. I backed to the far wall and realized the only exit was down those same stairs. The windows were too small, the drop too high, and the radio suddenly felt useless in my hand. The creaks paused directly under the hatch, and a soft knock came from the underside, polite as a neighbor. The latch lifted on its own, and the trapdoor rose a few inches. A face appeared in the gap, upside lit by my beam, eyes reflecting like glass beads. The person's smile was wrong, too practiced, and they kept their head perfectly still while their eyes tracked me across the room. I shouted and swung the flashlight like it could push them back. The hatch flew open, and the figure surged up, fast enough that the air changed temperature. I bolted past them toward the stairs, and their hand brushed my jacket collar, catching for a split second before I tore free. I half fell down the steps, boots slipping on worn boards, and the tower shook with each impact. Above me, footsteps followed with a steady confidence, never rushing, never losing rhythm. I burst out at the base and sprinted into the tree line, not caring where the service road was, as long as the tower wasn't behind me. I kept running until I found the ranger station lights and got the door locked between me and the dark. When we went back at dawn, the tower cabin was empty, but the trapdoor latch was bent outward, like it had been pried from inside. On the top step, facing up toward the hatch, was a fresh boot print, wet, as if someone had climbed all the way down after I left.